So let me tell you a little bit about Kara. Kara Haney has practiced meditation and studied Buddhism since 1993. With over 20 years in recovery, her background includes both Buddhist practice and the understanding of craving and 12-step recovery. Since 2013, she has assisted in starting Buddhist recovery groups within communities, addiction treatment facilities, and jails, and continues to be a foundational member and mentor for the Buddhist recovery community. Kara was empowered to teach by Bob Stahl and was also trained to facilitate mindfulness and Buddhist meditation by JoAnna and Vinny Ferraro of the former Against the Stream Meditation Society. She teaches weekly Dharma groups, daylong retreats, and offers Dharma courses such as A Year to Live and Eightfold Path. She completed a 20-year career as a dental surgical assistant and currently enjoys living in Santa Cruz while working for her master's degree in social work. So very grateful to have you with us here today.
Thank you, Robin. It's nice to be here, and I appreciate the invitation by Buddhist Recovery Network to practice with all of you. And so welcome to everybody that is here. And I just want to take a moment to appreciate that, the effort and energy to come in this way and meet in this way to practice and to explore different themes in recovery and in our Buddhist practice. So here in America, in the United States, it's a 3-day weekend. Sometimes those are often really busy, but wherever you are in the world, it takes some effort, like I said, to come. And so just before we begin this meditation together, just inviting yourself to realize and recognize that you're inviting the body to be still. And if there's unresolved issues before you came in front of the computer today, to just put it aside on a shelf. It could be there for you to pick up later. But to really offer this to yourself to practice for this short period of time that we will be. And so I invite you again to begin to feel the body as it's sitting in stillness, either on a chair or a cushion, supported by the earth, grounded here. And if you haven't already, you can close your eyes if that is accessible for you. And if it's not comfortable, just downcast the eyes to the floor or the table in front of you. And begin to invite relaxation, softening the muscles in the face, dropping the tongue from the roof of the mouth, softening your throat. Drop your shoulders down your back. Soften the chest, the belly, and continue to invite relaxation to this body organically, bringing the attention to the body, feeling embodied. You will notice that there is a slight movement in the body, the lifelong friend of the breath. The body is breathing. And so I invite you to rest the attention now on this breathing. Breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. If the mind is restless today, which there are days like this, you can count the breath to give the mind a concept, to settle the mind. And each time your attention wanders to a story, a thought, a memory, an emotion, It's totally okay. It's just what the mind does. With friendliness, with kindness, notice that you went off on a story and bring the attention to this next breath, breathing in, breathing out. Bringing the attention again. Each time the mind wanders, it is a practice. Mindfulness is an act of remembering. It doesn't matter if the mind begins to wander 5 times during this session or 5,000 times. What matters is each time that mindfulness is present and we notice that the mind has wandered, and we come back to the breath. For just a few moments longer, practicing resting the attention with simply breathing in this present moment, observing the breath, feeling the breath. And I'd like to invite you that while we've been sitting here for a few moments, that maybe during this practice period of settling in and bringing our attention to breathing in the body, maybe there's been reoccurring thinking that's asking for your attention, or there's a sharpness in the body physically, some level of unpleasant, or you might use the word uncomfortable or pain, something that's coming up. And so I invite you, if that is present, regardless of where it is on the spectrum, it could be very subtle or very clear and apparent and screaming, to turn towards this unpleasantness without needing to do anything, but just to observe it, to care for it, to open to it. And this is compassion. Noticing the sensations in your body as you extend this kindness to something that isn't exactly comfortable. Breathing in and breathing out. Allowing what is arising to be here and allowing it to pass away. Observing, not trying to control anything, just breathing and caring. In just a few moments, you will hear a sound of a bell to end this meditation together. When you hear the sound, you may gently begin to open your eyes. So welcome back and thank you for practicing this. Sometimes we think, oh, that was a short practice, but it was practice. And I really appreciate and bows to your practice, regardless if it's 10 minutes or an hour. It is still checking in with your own heart, with your own relationship to experience. So thank you. So today, yes, continuing in what I threaded into the meditation just a little bit was this topic of compassion. Karuna is the Pali word for compassion. And in Pali, it literally is translated that it's experiencing a trembling or quivering of the heart in response to a being's pain. I don't know if any of you have experienced that. I have felt a felt sensation in my body when I meet my own pain or someone else's pain that very much does feel like a quiver, a shaking. It is very vulnerable and tender. And so oftentimes we are brought up with the idea that, and I'll use the word suffering, but suffering is in Pali again, in our Buddhist text, it's called dukkha. And so you can use the word suffering, you can use the word pain, you can use the word uncomfortable or unpleasant, but it's that sensation we all know. As I bring in that word suffering, you have your top 5 things that you can probably come to mind right away. Maybe one of those things even arrived as a visitor during this meditation today. I know for me, I have scoliosis, and sometimes when I sit, there's a physical sharpness that arises. And I used to call it just pain. I'd get frustrated. I'd be so identified with it. If only it wasn't there, I could have a good sit. And so I would suppress or push it away. And it was through practice that I was able to understand that this is one of my greatest teachers, this sharpness. And I stopped calling it pain. And I started identifying the different characteristics of it. Oh, it's warm, it's sharp, it's trembly, it's vibrating. And then watching as it changes. And I began to soften around it. And it's interesting, we are brought up with the idea that suffering or pain is somehow wrong, that it's to be avoided, that it is unbearable and should not be faced. And of course, we live in a society that accommodates our need to deny pain as best as we can. And this is the practice to actually bring our attention and our awareness to the whole thing, to, the pleasant and unpleasant. And when I do that with my practice, I bring in this warm curiosity. And so I talked about personally a physical pain, but sometimes if you've ever experienced when we have restless mind during our meditation, it can come very felt as frustrating, and that can be suffering. The mind is continuing wanting to rehash and habitually react to some scenario that happened in the past, and we want to resolve it, and there's a sensation or a mood that's arising, how we're feeling frustrated about it. And that in that moment is a moment to see, this is a moment of suffering. May I care about this moment, this suffering in this moment. And may I give myself what I need in this moment, which maybe is a pause, a breath, a check in and feel, where do I feel this tension in the body, and breathe there. So it's an intimate relationship. There is a teacher who's in the Zen tradition, Thich Nhat Hanh, many of you have likely heard of him, who considers compassion a verb. It's a doing, it's an action. And so it's something that we actually meet and observe the feeling sensation, which for those of us here who are a creative bunch of people who have this reactive mind that has habitual ways of moving in the world with longing and craving, addictions in various forms, it comes up sometimes as an urgency. You feel this urgency in your body. For me, it feels constricting in my diaphragm, in my throat. And so I bring this interest when that arises, and I bring some friendliness to it. I give attention to it. And I notice, does it change? I notice what thoughts arise as I feel the sensations. Sometimes they can be identifying thoughts. Why do I always do that this way? What's wrong with me? Judgmental thoughts, criticism. And so rather than get hooked into that thought and down that rabbit hole, just notice thinking. And then again, bringing the attention back. Is this pleasant or unpleasant? Usually unpleasant, but not to do anything about it, just to feel it. And sometimes it can seem unbearable, and it's often painful. And so that this is a practice similar to our other practices that we do. It's like learning an instrument. It's a regular, ongoing daily practice. One of the things that I like to meet when something's challenging is I will feel it arise, or a thought that arises with a memory. Maybe it's an unresolved issue with somebody, and it'll come up with judgments, and then I want to separate myself from the other person because I feel, blame will come in, or I feel they did me wrong. There's so many things the mind will do with rationalizing. And again, instead of getting caught into that story, which is so intoxifying, and to then notice thinking and to be like, oh, I see you. I feel you and I care about you. This is a moment of pain. This is a moment of suffering. This is a moment that is activating thoughts of separation, fear of being rejected or abandonment, or whatever it is that arises for us individually. We have our top 10 tunes that we identify with. And so we're learning how to understand and cultivate compassion in our heart. It's a realization, and again, it's a practice. And the first step is being able to recognize, as the Buddha has taught us, as in the Four Noble Truths, like to actually understand suffering. How does it arise, and what is our relationship to it? And so we're understanding, we're recognizing and being open to, and to acknowledge that this sorrow, this pain, this suffering exists. And why I appreciate it is, as many of you know, is we do this when we're on, the formal practice of meditation, sitting on a chair or a cushion, turning into our own experience. And I know for me, why that's beneficial is because it helps cultivate a sense of confidence and tolerance for when I become activated or emotionally dysregulated because of discomfort or because of pain. And so I practice this relationship, this intimacy, and I practice the compassion in my formal meditation mindfulness practice. However, it doesn't end there. As many of us know, it is a seamless practice. When we get up from sitting, the formal mindfulness meditation practice, we go into the world and we go into our relationships and our friends and our work. And this practice of mindfulness is something to cultivate that it's seamless. And what happens? We come into the world and there's so much going on. It's a very busy world out there. Sometimes I can really appreciate going on retreat and just like, can I just stay here? But that's not true for me as a layperson. I learn so much from each of the people I meet on my path. But in this world, we have things that are very painful. I can bring up what's just been going on in the United States this weekend. Again, was another mass shooting and terrorism, domestic terrorism. And it brings up fear, and it brings up anger and blame. And again, we can become activated of all the different things we want to do to change how things are. And that is really important. And there is changes to be made, right? And we can, for those who are the people who want to be the change makers and the advocates, we can do that. And the first thing, though, is to come from responding and not reaction. To not come from a place where we're activated emotionally and emotionally dysregulated, but to come to a place where we feel that we are responding, we understand the hurt that we're holding in our heart. We're able to be open to it. So then we can then radiate that care and compassion to all beings, not just ourselves. So all beings in the world, even to the people who cause harm, who are going through this world in delusion, who are hurting. That's advanced practice. And so we start with here, with our own heart. What we are doing in the compassion meditation as we continue to practice, and I invite you and I can even challenge you to bring the compassion practice, even if it's just the beginning of your regular practice that you do in whatever form that is, to allow 10 or 15 minutes of that to be compassion, a form of a Brahmavihara, a heart practice. And what it is it's transforming our relationship to this suffering, to this pain. I have a teacher named Bob Stahl who says the word intimacy actually means into me I see. And so I give you that so that may you see clearly what your relationship is with the suffering, the uncomfortableness, the pain that arises that we hold in this fathom-long body from our history, and that you meet it with some kindness and some care. I'm going to pause because I'd like to check in and see if there's any questions regarding compassion practice and or comments. And so I'll look at over here on the computer and see if there's any questions here. I see a thank you and you're welcome.
So at this time, we're happy to take questions. And I just wanted to, I forgot to mention that if you would actually like to turn your camera on and present your questions face to face, there should be a little icon, a raise your hand icon in the chat area, and you can press that, and I will look for raised hands. And so, yeah, we invite everyone to bring what you have to the conversation. Kara, if you would like for me to kick it off with a question, I can do that. I'm not really sure whether you were ready for that, but thought I would just.
All right, Robin.
Right. So thinking about this seamless mindfulness and this integration, how do we know when that's happening for us? And even if that's speaking from personal experience, yeah, I think it's good to have a sense of when we can. I mean, we often know when we're making progress, but what are some things we can look for?
Sure. Thank you for the question. And so of course, being human beings, there's this striving and clinging of like, I want seamless practice of mindfulness at all times. I want ease now. I want it just always. And part of the practice for me that I have noticed is that seamlessness means such as when I leave my cushion and I go into the world and I'm bringing my mindfulness, I'm aware of the intentions. The Buddha spoke about these 8 folds and in the Eightfold Path. What is my intention before I speak? What are my ethics? Am I harming people? Is this whatever I'm doing and acting in a certain way? Is it something that is harmful? Is the intention to harm or not to harm? Bringing that attention that I'm doing what I'm doing in the moment with my full attention. So in other words, like this, I can give this example, and maybe some of you can relate. Have you ever gotten into the car and you go to drive to the store and the mind is so like, it's on this sleepwalk, like co-pilot of just replaying a story again and again, that something that's either a fantasy or unresolved or whatever it is, right? We're stuck in a story. You show up at the store and you don't know how the hell you got there. It's like you just somehow arrived at the store. You don't remember turning, you don't remember putting on blinkers. It was because you were so consumed watching this movie, really. And so the seamless practice is whenever we're fully present in the moment, we feel the steering wheel, we're breathing, we're allowing ourselves to take in the sights of the color of the sky and the cars in front of us, and just being present with driving. You'll notice there'll be more spaciousness, a sense of openness, less constriction and tightness, because we're able to be here. So that's how I know when I'm more present and in the moment, is because the body feels less tense. There's a sense of, I also can remember things throughout the day. And I notice that there isn't a sense of urgency that's arising, this energetic urgency of trying to get things done, to get to the next place. And it's almost like I'm grasping so hard, because if only I get all this done, I can't wait to arrive wherever it is I think I'm going to go so I can relax. And it just keeps postponing myself from being right here. So seamless mindfulness to me is, again, with compassion, with care, knowing that we don't do it perfectly, but if we can have the moments where we're totally present here, in this breath, feeling my feet on the ground, making dinner, or feeling my hands on the steering wheel, driving the car, and recognizing when we are mindful. The moments where that is, I'm going to use the word successful, that is actually a thing, and let that imprint on your heart. Oftentimes what we let imprint in our heart is when it's not there. damn it, I'm not doing it right. Dang it, if only I would have sat. It's too late now. My day's already screwed up, you know? So you can begin again and again, right now. Take a breath, feel your body on the chair. And as I'm talking with you, Robin, I hope that answered part of your question.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Yes, very much so. We do have someone who's in our audience today named Chris, who would like to come live and ask you a question.
Okay. Hi, Chris.
So,
hi. Oh, make sure I'm in the thing here. How are you doing today?
Hi, Chris. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So thank you. Actually, I think my question is just a riff and a springboard off of what you've already been talking about, which is, you know, holding that compassion in the midst of conflict, in the midst of needs, you know, a conflict, not just, you know, there's conflict arising when, you know, misunderstandings, and there's also conflict that arises or difficulties that arise around boundary crossings. And so, you know, kind of just also, you know, kind of maintaining or finding that sense of compassion in the midst of, right? So that's my question.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is in the midst of conflict or maybe miscommunication or something that's unresolved with another person, we'll say, then how do we meet that with compassion? Yeah. So thank you for your question. And the first thing that I like to practice with is, and as you ask this question, I'm like, ooh, conflict, it's so wonderful. It's such a great teacher, right? And I never used to meet it at all that way and I was conflict avoidant and still can tend to want to run and react that way. And so what happens is to remember that we're all learners in this life, that we are human beings. And when I'm having a situation that's arisen where me and say you and I are having a conversation and there's not understanding, so then we can pause for a moment. And I can be vulnerable and be like, you know, I'm feeling tight. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm feeling like either I'm not hearing you or you're not hearing me. And what can we do about this? You know, maybe this isn't the right time for this conversation, but it's an important conversation. And what can we do to help each other meet each other, to try to see each other's views? We may not agree, but at least so we can understand and respect each other. And so it's having those kind of conversations, and that's hella vulnerable. And so of course, it's take it with your own sense of boundary of if it's a new person that you've never met, you may not, you know, speak in that way with the person. You can do that internally with yourself, like, oh, I'm feeling really activated. This is uncomfortable, and you know, I need to step away. And we can tell the person, like, this is interesting topic for me, and I'd like to meet this again, but right now is not the time. And so really respect what's happening for us, because it is always helpful to come from a place of response rather than reactivity. It helps our central nervous system. It helps so that we can feel, you know, safe and stable within ourselves, that we're able to hold it with confidence of like, hey, hi, I see you, you see me, let's talk about this thing that we don't agree on. And each of us have different levels of what that is. So thank you for asking that question. And it's a practice, little steps, yeah. Thank you.
anyone else, thoughts that have come up during the teaching you would like to share, even if they're not questions? JD, would you like to turn your video on? I'm going to send you a little invite there.
Hi, JD.
How's that?
I can hear you now. Hello.
Great. Hey, thanks for doing this today. I really appreciate it and very grateful.
Thank you.
My question is, I'm interested in your opinion, especially in the context of recovery and working within a Sangha. Sometimes I have difficulty trying to parse out compassion and empathy and how that would matter. Just being in the company of my Sangha, which is a very small one. And could you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so what I'm hearing is when we're working with others in our Sangha, so that's an intimate group that you see on a regular basis, and being that we are human, there are humans that we definitely have, that push our buttons, so to speak, right? Okay, all right, so I'm getting a nod of it's okay. So
that's right.
Thank you for asking that question. And yeah, I can definitely relate to that. My original way of meeting people who show me my edges is I would avoid them. And that actually is not beneficial. We're here to learn from each other. And the beings that are bringing up something such as unpleasant or irritation in me, those are my greatest teachers. Why is this bothering me when a person shows up in this way? Is it because their view is different than mine? Okay, am I attached to my view? Is it because their delivery seems harsh? Okay, is there a way that I can talk to them? Is there about how, you know, I don't know the closeness of the person that could be having a harsh delivery, but maybe I know them enough to say, hey, when you present in this way, this is my felt experience. Can I share that with you? And so again, it's this opening up to, that's the compassion. The compassion begins first with ourselves. So when, you know, I see Jane at a meeting, I notice there's tightness in my chest and I want to avoid her. So I'm going to, in my own personal practice, start sending Jane some metta, but also start sending myself some, metta is kindness. So sending myself some kindness and some care for what is arising that's uncomfortable. And then after I've done that for a period of time, then when I go into the situations where I'm meeting with Sangha members at like where we sit together, to turn towards and start the very small practice of maybe welcoming Jane, like, hi, it's good to see you here tonight. And just practice with those small little steps of connection rather than separation. We don't know how people go through the world and what pain that they're carrying and where they are in the spectrum of delusion and aversion and greed, right? And so everybody is trying to do the best they can. And sometimes their harm spills out on us. And if it does, we can say something. Hey, when you did that, that hurt. And I just want to let you know. And we can, you know, send compassion for them. But definitely the individuals in our life that are showing us the edges are the ones that we actually need to move towards, because it's through those edges that we rub that they smooth, right? Almost like a rock in a tumbler. It smooths and it polishes, and that's what happens. It's a purification process, almost like filtering water. We remove that dirt in our eyes and we can see clearly. So I hope I answered your question, JD. And again, oftentimes, especially us, I love our creative, like greater Sangha of people who are in recovery. We have great intentions of like, I just want it to be okay. And I want things, and I'm not saying this is what you said in your question or even your comment, but I want it to be resolved and I don't want this issue. And yet we're all here learning from each other, and we come with whatever we have. And so let's see if we can meet each other as we authentically are, to the best of their ability in that moment and where I am in that moment. And to remember to just keep turning towards, keep opening up with boundaries, but also with curiosity, right? So.
Yeah, very well. Thank you so much. That was very helpful, and I especially appreciate your solicitation of where in your body you're feeling certain I don't want to say stimulus, but where in your body you're feeling your own reaction, and then also what you're picking up from the other person. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, JD, for asking the question. And yes, I'll always reframe it back to where do we feel it in our own body, because it's the sensations, that the phenomena that meets our sense doors of our body, that's in this real-time moment. And then it takes us out of those perpetuation of stories that we identify with. So yeah, thank you for that question.
So we've reached time, I think. I don't see any more questions in the mix, so maybe it's a good place to wrap up.
Robin,
yeah.
can I end with sharing a poem and then we can just close?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. All right, so I want to share this poem because the first time I heard it, it allowed me to show up authentically as I am, and that I'm okay. Even if I show up with pain or messy or not put together, that's welcome here. Everything's welcome here. So this is a poem by a British writer who was born in Kenya, a poet, and this is Worcestershire. First thought after seeing you smile. Come with every wound and every person you've ever loved, every lie you ever told, and whatever it is that keeps you up at night. Every mouth you've ever punched in, all the blood you've ever tasted. Come with every enemy you've ever made and all the family you've ever buried. And every dirty thing you've ever done. Every drink that burnt your throat, and every morning you've woken with nothing and no one. Come with all your loss, your regrets, sins, memories, blackouts, secrets. Come with all the rot in your mouth and that voice like needle hitting record. Come with your kind eyes and weeping knuckles. Come with all your shame. Come with your swollen heart. I've never seen anything more beautiful than you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much, Cara. Thanks for sharing your authenticity and your compassionate wisdom. It's been a really great session. Thank you. So, let's see. Just, yeah, I'm just kind of overwhelmed by one at the moment. So the Gautama Buddha gave us this idea. Generosity brings happiness at every stage of its expression. We experience joy in forming the attention to be generous. We experience joy in the actual act of giving something. And we experience joy in remembering the fact that we've given. So I would like to present joy and offer that Donna link again. If you'd like to show your support for Cara and for the Buddhist Recovery Network, here's where you go, and just indicate that it's for the Academy. This is one of our only sources of revenue to keep our program going, to cover our Zoom costs, and also to turn these talks into podcasts so that you can hear them at any time. Yes, so we have a special event coming up this weekend, and it is our second Buddhist Recovery Summit. We have them every couple of years, and there are a couple of spots that have opened up at the last minute, and just in case you'd like to go, I'm going to give you the link to the website and the link to the Facebook group so that you can go check it out. You would, of course, have to register pretty quickly, but we have some tremendous teachers there, some panelists, including Kevin Griffin and Vince Cullen, Vim Lasara, Gary Sanders, Deborah Grace, Sue Neffield Ellis, Brian Williams, Jean Tuller, and lots of folks in a worldwide recovery sangha. We are very excited to be having this in Lacey, Washington. And then I also wanted to mention that our next Buddhist Recovery Network Academy event is Sunday, October 6th. It's always the first Sunday of each month. And speaking that day will be Enrique Colazzo. So please join us. Meanwhile, may you all be well, and I'm wishing you all a great week. And I will leave the room open for another 10 minutes or so, so that you can copy links. And Kara, if there's anything else you would like to share in a link here, or even verbally about events that you have coming up, or other places to follow your teachings or to connect with you, please share that with us. All right, thank you. Really enjoyed it today, and take care.
Thank you.